Today we're going to be talking about this camera and why I believe it is the ultimate all-round best value camera on the market right now. I've made a few modifications to my kit to make it work for me. I'm going to build it up and talk you through how I rig it to make it work best for filming wildlife.
2 hours later.
Let me explain why I chose the FX6. Normally, wildlife productions will usually go out with a red, probably a Raptor nowadays, maybe a Sony Venice. I've even heard of an ARRI 35 going out on a few shoots. We'll also take the red, Gemini and Helium. And they are expensive cameras, and generally the production companies will own their own cameras as well, and so it's quite hard to make a return on an investment in such an expensive camera. And so I went for a more specialist camera, the FX6, and I went for it because of its superpower. It can see in the dark. I knew I had a few night shoots. I was filming pangolins and I was filming bush babies, and I've had a few other shoots coming up as well, and so I thought this is the perfect camera. It's great to have because it can see in the dark. It is the go-to camera for night filming, but it also works really well as a backup camera. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that superpower because it is amazing what this camera can do. The dual native ISO of 800 and 12,800 means that when it gets dark, you can flip up into that 12,800 mode and it does really well. The noise disappears and you can push that up to 50,000, 80,000 ISO and still get really nice looking footage with a little bit of denoising. I've even heard of it being used up to 200,000 ISO with some denoising in post, which is ridiculous. I mean, this camera can see stuff that we can't see. If you point it on a moonlit night, it will pick up stuff that our eyes aren't sensitive enough to see, but this camera can see it. And so for natural history, the go-to is this camera. It's not just low light that this camera does well. It can film 4K full frame at up to 120 frames a second, which is nearly 5 times slow-mo at 25 frames a second. As well as the slow-mo, which is really useful for natural history, it has cache record, which is a game changer, lifesaver, and also memory saver for wildlife filmmaking. I can't overestimate how important having cache record is. It means that you can film the unpredictable. It's part of our jobs to predict animal behaviour, but sometimes you just don't know when an animal is going to come into frame, and especially if you're in a hide, limited field of view, you can only really see what the camera is seeing. And so if you've got an animal that comes in from behind you or off to the side, having the pre-record, having a cache is really useful. One of the other benefits of this camera is it's pretty small and dinky. I've actually fitted this on my really old Ronin S, and it balances fine with the 20-70mm lens on. That is a real benefit because it means that it's lightweight and small and is very versatile. I can put it on the gimbal if required. As well as being small, obviously it's not as small as a DSLR, but it does have everything in the right place, especially it's set out for a solo operator. So all the buttons on this side are really useful. You have the ND, which I'll talk about in a second, but you have these user buttons, and I have mine set up for slow and quick, so I can flick between normal speed and off speed. I have cache record, so I can toggle that on and off depending on whether it needs cache record or not, or if it's predictable. And then the third one is I have set up for the dual ISO, so to flick between normal light and low light filming, which having those there, I don't have to take my eye off the viewfinder. I can just press the button and know immediately. We've also got all the menu on this side, so I can do everything that I need to without taking my eye off the viewfinder and the tripod handle, which is really, really useful. I can keep an eye on the animals and what they're doing while changing menu settings, which works really, really nicely. NDs, built-in NDs. Some of the most expensive cameras still don't have it. Red, it can be done. Do it, put them inside. Having NDs is really useful, especially on a longer lens, because certainly on the CN20 and even on this, it's a really wide front diameter of lens. So you need a big matte box, you need big ND filters, and often, especially if you're in a hide, but even if you're somewhere not in a hide, having the internal NDs makes it so much easier. You're not having to swap out ND filters, you don't get your fingerprints on them, and you also, if you don't scare anything by waving your hand in front of the camera. So yeah, having the NDs inbuilt makes it much better for filming wildlife with. Another real benefit for me using it both commercially and for personal filming is having the raw ability of this camera. Normally, if I'm using an FX6 for TV work, it will be with an Atomos, and that is so we can record raw and get as much data out as possible. And generally we're using it in the dark, and so the raw will usually denoise better than the normal footage. I tend to, when I'm filming personally, not use it, because I think that for stuff going online, it's more than good enough recording internally. It has 2 card slots, so you can fit a load of memory in. Another really useful thing is the top handle and the audio, and the ability to actually plug in a microphone. Not that we do it very much in natural history filming. We normally turn all the audio off so you can't catch me swearing at the animals. But the ability to pop a microphone in, just plug it straight in, is really, really nice. Pop in a shotgun mic, pick up some nice atmospheres. That's a really, really useful feature to have. It also means that if you need to film interviews, if you're doing a more people and wildlife based thing, you can do that. As well as being small, obviously you can see I've rigged it up quite large, and it has the ability to be built up into whatever you need to use it, or however you need to use it. But even still, this setup is considerably smaller than a lot of the other cameras, and I've chosen quite a few of these things to keep that footprint nice and compact but still usable. Another thing about the camera is it's not very expensive. I mean, it is expensive. It's, I think, £6,000 new. When you compare it to the Sony Venice, the Red Raptor, even the Arri 35, it's pretty cheap, and it does a good amount of what they do. You might not get quite as much dynamic range or quite as good colour science, but you get 80 to 90% of the way there with a lot less than 80% of the cost. And I think the one main downside for natural history filming with this camera is the full frame sensor. You can't put a CN20 on it because the CN20 only covers Super 35, and you still get vignetting even if you put the extender in. And this camera doesn't do a Super 35 crop mode. That would be the main downside. If you're on a shoot with a CN20, you probably want a Super 35 camera, and this isn't it. I'll talk you through how it's all rigged up now. And I've got a tilter cage on this, and I've chosen a 15mm system to try and keep it small. And I've had to do a few things to keep it small. This is the Sigma 60-600 in an EF fit. I got the EF version of this lens rather than the Sony E version because I can use the EF on a lot of other cameras, whereas it's quite hard to adapt an E-mount lens onto other cameras. It's much more versatile for me having the EF mount. I'd love to try the E-mount just for the system to make it a little bit smaller, remove the adapter, make the system a bit tighter. I've actually modded the lens, and down here I have from Full Frame Camera Co. It's called the rig foot. The foot on the lens is actually quite long, and it means that you can't put it on 15mm bars. So I have swapped that out, and it means that it's much lower and more compact. I've got the adapter screwed into the rig down here, the foot attached with Croziel 15mm lens support, and I also have the lightweight tilter dovetail for sliding backwards and forwards. So it's all built around this 15mm bar system, so it's compact. I have the tilter V-lock mount on the back, and this battery will keep the camera going most of the day, especially when it's rigged out like this. When you start putting other things on it, like the Atomos or an external monitor, it gets a bit more battery heavy. If I was conservative, I could get most of a day on one battery. I'd bring two, but I'd be happy if I got through on one. Having a camera that means that you only have to bring two batteries rather than 6 or 8 for a day's filming. It helps you back out, and it's much more efficient. I use these Swit ones. Swit are a reasonable brand. They're slightly big now. A lot of the battery companies have the mini batteries, and I think when I next get batteries, I'm going to look at getting smaller versions, just because they pack down smaller, they take up less room in your bag. So not necessarily lighter, but they are smaller. So I think my next set, these aren't big by any means, but I'll probably get a set of smaller batteries as well. The camera doesn't come with this viewfinder. It comes with the EVF and a little EVF cover that flips up, but it doesn't come with a viewfinder. So I bought this as an add-on. This bracket here on the EVF isn't strong enough to take the viewfinder, and so you put it on normally, and it just droops down. It goes. It's just a bit of one of the design faults with this camera. It's not designed for the viewfinder. I have bought an add-on that makes it much easier to use, and there's loads of different companies that make them. I think CVP actually made their own bright tangerine one, and there's a load of other ones. I think Small Rig might have done one. The one that I got is really lightweight and elegant, and I think it works really nicely. It's from Full Frame Camera Company, same company that make the rig foot, and I'll put the link below in the description. And it works with a bit that just clamps around the mechanism, and then a bit that clamps onto the side of the EVF. And it's got magnets, and the magnets just engage and hold the viewfinder in position. It is slightly loud, and so I've modified it with a bit of tape just to stop the magnets clapping when they engage with each other. So yeah, that's how I've set that up. There is a side handle that you can use, but I have it set up like this, so it's really sort of low profile and lightweight, and it fits in the bag easily. So yeah, I think that is pretty much it. That's the rig as I use it. Hopefully that has shown you why I think it's a really, really useful camera, why it's probably the best value camera for wildlife filmmaking that is out on the market right now. Let me know if you've got any questions. I know I've gone through a lot of stuff fairly quickly here, so if you've got any particular questions about how I do anything, then let me know. And also let me know what setup you're using. There's loads of different types of and ways of filming animals, and so it'd be interesting to hear what kit you use. I've got loads of plans for other videos coming up, so yeah, stay tuned, and if you want to see them, make sure you're subscribed. See you next time.